Hello, welcome to my live stream. This is Jeremy Crow. I am a Luciferian occultist, and tonight I wanted to do an AMA, which is an Ask Me Anything. Let's see here. Is it working? Okay, yeah, looks like we're live. True Detective says, hi there, Jeremy. Hello. Welcome. Glad you could make it. All right. Yeah, tonight I just wanted to do an Ask Me Anything, an AMA, to just cover whatever we feel like talking about. So it's relatively unstructured, just whatever comes to mind. And just while people are coming in, something that I've been doing lately on these live streams is starting off with a divination, usually a type of bibliomancy is what I've been doing a lot of the time, and I'm going to do it again. I think I've been reading this my copy of the Tao Te Ching, and it's really fun to go through and read one of the chapters in here at random. So I'm going to do that here. Let me just put the mic down for a second. Great. So I'm just going to flip through. And then let's see here. Okay. Got one here. It is chapter 40. And this one looks like it's a pretty short one. I'll show you what it looks like here. All right. So the Tao moves in every direction at once. Its essence is fluid and yielding. It is the maker of everything under the sun, and everything comes out of nothing. The Tao moves in every direction at once. Its essence is fluid and yielding. It is the maker of everything under the sun, and everything comes out of nothing. Yeah, I can relate to that. Usually, what I've been noticing as I read through this, and I've read this before, but every time you come back to it, you start to get something new out of it. And what I find that what is referred to as the Tao in this, I tend to refer to in my own personal cosmology, I guess you could call it, is the void. And so let me just read it and replace the Tao with that. The void moves in every direction at once. Its essence is fluid and yielding. It is the maker of everything under the sun, and everything comes out of nothing. Yeah. So I feel like the Tao is like the substrate reality through which all experiences arise, or from which all experience arises. And yeah, I think that that's really on point. Okay, we have a couple more comments here. Big Bunny Love gave a winky smile and says, why do you do what you do? And Beyond Zebra said, howdy, Jeremy. Howdy, Beyond Zebra. So why do I do what I do? And I assume you're referring to why am I a Luciferian and why do I practice Luciferianism? Well, it's because one day I realized that I was a Luciferian. I just kind of realized it one day, and I wasn't intentionally searching out what Luciferianism meant and then said, oh, that sounds like me. Back when I started, there wasn't a lot of information out there. It wasn't a very well-defined system. And the information that was out there, most of it was from conspiracy theorists that were equating it with Satanism. And I don't equate it with Satanism. I feel that Luciferianism and Satanism are two completely different things. There is some overlap, but you could say that about almost any two traditions that are out there. Luciferianism, I realized there was an undercurrent within the Western esoteric tradition where you had this light bearer archetype that would pop up here and there. And you see it in the story of Prometheus. Prometheus is probably one of the purest examples of the light bearer archetype in mythology. So you have this character who shares hidden and forbidden knowledge with humanity because they want to empower humanity and they want to undermine systems of power that are taking advantage of people's ignorance, that are twisting knowledge to gain power, and through the truth being revealed, it allows people to make an informed decision, and they can't be as easily controlled when they're not ignorant, when they have the knowledge. And I realized that that's what Lucifer meant. And I realized that was the drive that was motivating me personally as well, to seek out, uncover hidden and forbidden knowledge, and to share it, especially with those who are looking for it, to make it available for those who are looking for that knowledge. And that has been the guiding light, pardon the pun, ever since. And that was probably about 26 years ago or so. So I first started out, I was raised Christian, and I began questioning it even as a very young child. I knew how to read early on. My father taught me how to read before I went to school. And they wanted me to go to Catholic school, and we hadn't really been very religious up to that point. My parents aren't very overtly religious, but they do consider themselves Catholic. And my father went to Catholic school, and he wanted me to go through Catholic school as well. So I actually got baptized because they were like, well, if he's going to come to a Catholic school, he should probably be baptized. And that's what the request that they had before I could be registered. And so I was about 4 or 5 when I got baptized, and I remember it. It's actually kind of a funny story. My uncle, one of my uncles, was my godfather, and his 2 kids, my 2 cousins, they were there, and they were there as well. It was a very small private ceremony, and at one point when the priest said amen, my one of my cousins, the younger cousin, she said, He-Man, where's He-Man? And I always thought that was hilarious. But yeah, he poured the water on my head and all that kind of thing. And my mother had brought me to a mass, and I kept asking questions. I was like, what's going on here? Anyways, it was something that came to be significant to me. All these rituals and the burning of the incense and the candles and all that stuff had a big impact on me because I hadn't really been exposed to any of that up until that point. And then suddenly, I'm old enough to kind of understand what's going on to some extent, and I'm exposed to this ceremonial magic, essentially, to this ritual process. And so I got into I was like, I need to learn more about this, and I started reading the Bible. And as I'm reading the Old Testament, I started at the beginning, like you would any book. And I remember going to my parents and saying, are you sure that is this right? Like, what's going on here? Because the God that's described in this book is seems more like a demon to me. He seems like a monster. Like, is this really describing God? Like, it didn't make any sense to me, because you have him telling people to go murder like entire entire cities, and kill the women and children, and even the animals and everything, and killing, like, trying to kill off the entire planet other than one family, and all these crazy atrocities that God is committing. And I'm like, this doesn't even make any sense. And they were like, oh no, yeah, it is. And I was like, all right, and I kind of just accepted it on a provisional basis, I suppose you could say. But I never lost that questioning. And eventually I got to the point where I was like, okay, I don't believe this anymore. But I still felt that drive to have a spiritual life and to be part of a community like that. And so I started exploring different world religions, and eventually I ended up picking up mostly Golden Dawn style ritual magic, right hand path ritual magic, which included Kabbalah and that sort of thing. And that was kind of a natural stepping stone for me, because it was essentially an esoteric version of what I had already grown up with. And as I'm exploring that, as I'm exploring tarot, also, I'm indigenous as well, Ojibwe. And so I was exposed to indigenous culture as well growing up. And I decided, you know what, I'm going to be a shaman, and I didn't even really fully understand what that meant, but I felt some sort of drive to have some sort of more genuine connection with nature and something, right? I just felt this urge. And so I'm exploring all these different, neo-paganism and traditional indigenous beliefs, Ojibwe mythology, Buddhism, all kinds of different things. And eventually, like I said, I ended up picking up ritual magic in the right hand path style, heavily inspired by the Golden Dawn tradition at the time. And at the same time, I picked up tarot, and that was when I was 17. I'm 47 now, so that was 30 years ago. And as I'm studying this, I start to find out about Freemasonry. And I'd heard of it, of course, but I start looking into it deeper, and I start exploring the esoteric side of things. And I hear these rumors that, it's Luciferian, and, it's secretly Luciferian, and all this kind of stuff that you hear from, like, conspiracy theorists and that. And I was drawn to it. I didn't admit to myself at the time that it was the Luciferian rumors that intrigued me, but I did. I wanted to find out. I was like, well, let me find out for myself what this is really about. And when I turned 21, I ended up joining an esoteric branch of Freemasonry that was a type of co-masonry. It allowed men and women equally, and the focus was on the esoteric side of things. And it was connected to theosophy, not officially, but there were a lot of ties to theosophy and that sort of thing. And as I'm going through the degrees, I start noticing things in the symbology, things in the ritual, that eventually it clicked. And I was like, oh, this is Lucifer. This is what Lucifer means. This is what the light bearer, which is the literal meaning of Lucifer. It's a Roman Latin word meaning light bearer or bringer of light. And I realized, like I said earlier, that it was about seeking hidden and forbidden knowledge and sharing it with others, especially those who are seeking out that knowledge, in order to free them. You know, the truth shall set you free, sort of thing, but to free them from systems of power that were exploiting ignorance and that were twisting knowledge and trying to control the narrative and, you know, programming people, essentially brainwashing people. And I felt that I had come out of a system of brainwashing, a system of indoctrination through the Catholic Church, that I had escaped that. And I also came into contact with Gnosticism. So that is a reinterpretation of the Judeo-Christian mythology, in which the God of the Bible is a monster, essentially, which they refer to as the demiurge. And that connected with this idea of Lucifer. And I conceived of this idea of a Gnostic Luciferianism, heavily inspired by Masonic Illuminism and Christian Gnosticism. And I started writing articles around the year 2000 that explained this merging of ideas. At the time, if you looked up Gnostic Luciferianism, you wouldn't find anything really. The only reference that I could find before I started writing articles about it in the year 2000 was from a really old book by Eliphas Levi called Transcendental Magic, or at least that's the English title of it. I believe the original French title was Rituel et Dogma de la Haute Magie. And in that book, which was a 2-volume book, in there he mentions Gnostic Luciferianism, but that's the only other reference. There wasn't really anybody talking about Gnostic Luciferianism in particular. And so I started writing articles about that and putting them online and sharing them with people, and it really resonated with a lot of people. And my understanding of Gnostic Luciferianism and Luciferianism in general continued to grow and evolve as I continued to learn about other various different traditions out there, different mythologies, where I encountered other versions of the light bearer archetype in, say, for example, in the Sumerian with Enki. Enki he follows that similar pattern, that light bearer pattern. And later in Babylonian, he was referred to as Ea. And his brother is Enlil, later named El, which is the name of God in the Old Testament, especially in the 5 books of Moses, the Pentateuch, the first 5 books, Genesis, etc. El is the Hebrew word for God in a lot of those early texts. And so I started realizing, oh, okay, so this doesn't come from nowhere. You know, this has been around for quite a while. It's this copper thread, you know, that I uncovered in these ancient mythologies and throughout the Western esoteric tradition. And I would find other examples. The serpent in Eden is clearly a light bearer archetype, and people recognize that as Lucifer in modern folklore, modern Christian folklore, whether it's Gnostic or not. And so, yeah, I started putting all these pieces together, and I would share that knowledge with people through articles. I created an online study group called Darkness Visible, and I was sharing these insights that I had about this, and kind of forming the early seeds of Gnostic Luciferianism back in 2000, and have continued to do so over the last 25 years. And yeah, it's just resonated with me so strongly, and I've never, I continue to consider myself a Luciferian, and especially a Gnostic Luciferian. And yeah, that's why I do what I do. Basically, hopefully that answered your question. Let me see, any more questions here or comments? True Detective says, have you come across any sort of color code in regards to becoming an adept, such as black, then white, then red? Well, you see that same kind of pattern in alchemy. They use the Latin terms. They say the Negredo phase, and the Albedo, and the Rubello. I believe those are the three. I think those are the words in Latin that they use in alchemy. And I studied alchemy a lot as part of my various different studies. I found it fascinating, both Eastern and Western, both internal and lab alchemy. I actually had an alchemy mentor where at first we just did lab alchemy and theory as well that informed that lab alchemy, but then we also got into inner alchemy. And while I'm learning that, I was also studying on my own Eastern forms, especially Taoist internal alchemy, which is a form of energy work, really, but it goes a lot further beyond that. Like, so early on, like I've been interested in Taoism for a very long time, and it has been a big inspiration for me, as well as lucid dreaming has been part of my life since I was a young child. And some of the most advanced lucid dreaming techniques that I've come across have been in Tibetan Buddhism, for example. So that's something that I also spent a lot of time studying. But in regards to your question, True, about the black, the white, and red, yeah, that's something. Those are phases in alchemy. And my alchemy mentor that I studied under for several years, he was in the direct lineage of Frater Albertus, who was famous for writing The Alchemist's Handbook, which I have a copy of in my personal library. And he also I believe he founded the Paracelsus Research Society or something like that, the PRS. And but I was never a part of the PRS. But my alchemy mentor, his teacher was a lady, I can't remember her name, but she was a New Zealander, and she studied directly under Frater Albertus, and then she taught my mentor Rubophilos Soliflare. So Rubophilos, so it went Frater Albertus, this lady whose name I can't remember at the moment, but I have it written down somewhere, I'm sure. And then she taught Rubophilos, and then Rubophilos taught me, among other students he had. And that was primarily lab alchemy that I was studying. But to learn lab alchemy, it really helps you understand the internal alchemy too, and it helps you understand the elements. Yeah, so those are phases in manifesting the quintessence or the fifth element. Hopefully that helps or answers or gives at least some additional context. Big Bunny Love says, what do you think of AI, a new outlet for Promethean fire? It's a really complex question. There's a lot of promise there, and certainly it is a vehicle through which we can utilize in order to explore knowledge. And I mean, you could think of it almost like an enhanced or advanced form of search engine, really. So in that sense, it does facilitate greater access to knowledge. And so in that way, yeah, it could be. It can also be a way to be lazy about the way that we use our brain. And in that sense, it could be detrimental toward knowledge, because we're kind of outsourcing our thinking to a machine. And when we do that, our brain will start to atrophy. We won't be able to, eventually, if we rely on it too much, we won't be able to think for ourselves anymore. We'll have to get the computer to think for us. So, it's a two-edged sword. It depends on how you use it, really. Corey Murphy says hello. Hi, Corey. Peter Gosenya, much respect, brother, and gives the horns. Welcome. Damon Wolf, long time no speak. I'm just glad you're still around and involved. Longest time, man. Yeah, it's been a while. I'm glad you could pop on here. Big Bunny Love gave a super chat. Thank you so much. I really appreciate that. I do have a goal here. If we get 5 super chats that are at least $2 Canadian, then I'll pull a card from the Hermetic Tarot, this one right here. This is one of my favorite decks that I have, that I use, one of the ones that I use most often. So I'll pull a card from that if we get 4 more super chats that are $2 or more. Brent Watley says, I have been following you for many years. Thank you for always sharing knowledge. Oh, you're very welcome. It's my pleasure. Like I said, I have a strong personal drive towards sharing knowledge. It's something that I feel called to do, and it's just, I find it very enjoyable and pleasurable, and I get a lot of gratification out of it. So Damon says, perhaps touch on the Christ-Lucifer paradox and how under Gnosticism they can be one and the same, kind of like how you just mentioned God in the Old Testament actually seeming evil, not good. You're saying it exactly as I'm typing it. Awesome. Okay. Yeah, actually, I want to cover that in its own dedicated video. Maybe I'll do it maybe tomorrow if I have a chance to go live tomorrow evening. I've been trying to do this as often as possible. Trying to do it at 10:30 p.m. Eastern time, as many evenings as I am able to. I can't do it every night, but I'll try and do it most nights. So, come back here in the evening, Eastern time, 10:30, and hopefully most nights I'll have a live stream. And I want to cover that specific topic. Is Jesus Lucifer, or is Jesus a Lucifer or a light bearer? And the biblical connections there, and we can go more in depth in that, and that'll be, I think, a really interesting topic. Peter says, Jeremy, mother F crow. Inner alchemy, mental transmutation. Yeah, exactly. Big Bunny Love says, I also practice Taoism and alchemy. I've been down these paths. Interesting parallels to our journeys. Yeah, that sounds like a lot of overlap there. Maybe. I like the Holy Light Tarot a lot myself. Highly recommend. Are you into underground? Are you onto the underground stream? I'm not sure exactly what you mean by the underground stream. I haven't ever checked out the Holy Light Tarot. I've never encountered that before, so that's a new one to me. I might have to look it up after. And actually, it sounds like it'd be really great to have a conversation with you, Big Bunny Love. And actually, after this, and after all these public live streams that I do, around 11:11, I have a private meeting that I have for members of the Novus Ordo Luciferi. This is an esoteric order that I founded, and I use it as a vehicle to teach a system of occultism that I've developed and refined over the course of the 30 years plus that I've been studying occultism and practicing occultism and exploring, experimenting. And finally, I've refined this system of occultism that I refer to as Luciferian alchemy. And I teach it to members of the Novus Ordo Luciferi. And if you want to become a member of that, In the description of this video, there is a link to the Patreon, and that's where most members are joining and how they're paying their membership dues, which is just $5 a month, $5 American a month. And that gets you access to all of the writings and teachings that I've released so far to the members, private, exclusive content, as well as all of the recorded lessons that I've held for members on topics such as tarot, for example. I get into the history, I get into the use of it, not just for divination, but tarot magic, some stuff that you can't really find elsewhere. I did a 4-week course on lucid dreaming and astral projection, which I think there's about 6 hours worth of video lessons recorded for that in the archive, which if you join, you get access to. And I shared some of the most advanced teachings on lucid dreaming and astral projection that I've encountered and that I've personally experienced and practiced, and the insights that I bring to the table on that. Other topics that I've covered are the new Luciferian era and the calendar that I developed to help track that with its own date format, which tracks the solar, the lunar, and the telluric cycles, starting at the darkest points of those cycles and going through various different time loops, essentially. We're currently in year 12, by the way, of the new Luciferian era. Year 0 began on December 21st of 2012 in the Common Era, the winter solstice of 2012. And that was the beginning of year 0, and we're currently in year 12. Agar Coin says, how can I invoke Satan? There's a lot of different ways you could do that. One way is through lucid dreaming, and then you can call Satan within a lucid dream, and that's probably one of the easiest ways you can go about it. I don't really have a lot of time here because, as I said, at 11:11 there will be a private meeting for members of the Novus Ordo Luciferi, and you can join. Like I said, go to the link in the description below and go to the Patreon. You could join now, and a couple posts back there'll be a link to the private meeting, and that's a secret private link that you can utilize to hop on in like about 5 minutes or 4 minutes from now. And yeah, we have all kinds of great discussions. Tonight will not be a recorded one. This is more of a casual discussion where we can discuss anything. But sometimes it's a formal lesson, which does get recorded and put into the archive for anybody who joins. Will get access to that full back catalog. And I think at this point there is over 45 hours worth of recorded video lessons. If you are familiar with the Luciferian Research Society website and Discord server, NOL or Novus Ordo Luciferi membership also grants you access to the website for the Luciferian Research Society, which has people not just in the Novus Ordo Luciferi, but in the greater Luciferian community. There's a lot of individuals. There's members of the Order of Phosphorus. There are members of the Temple of Set. There's solo practitioners, and they're all in there together, cross-pollinating. There are private groups within the LRS that members of different orders can conduct their own private business, but there's a lot of public groups. There's public forums, blog posts. You have your own private or personalized, not private, but customizable profile page, that sort of thing. So if you're interested in that, leave a comment on this video after it becomes, when it's not live anymore, and I'll give you a link on how to get there. But you could just go to luciferianresearch.org if you want to go to the LRS. So yeah, there's a lot of stuff going on. It's really fun, and I'd love it if any of you who are interested in this would take it to the next level and join our community in some form or another, whether that be through the Luciferian Research Society, whether that be through joining the Novus Ordo Luciferi, or even just hanging out with me on these live streams on my YouTube channel, this public YouTube channel. If you like this video, please subscribe so that you'll get notified when I do go live and when I post pre-recorded videos and clips and things like that. Sometimes I share clips from the private lessons, just short kind of teaser clips from the NOL lessons. And yeah, I'm going to have to hop off here, but I really appreciate everybody who showed up tonight and participated in the discussion. I appreciate you, Big Bunny Love, for the super chat. That really helps a lot. And anybody who's watching this video after the fact that wasn't able to catch it live, I also appreciate you. And if you made it all the way to the end, then please click that like button on the video. Show me that that you enjoyed this video. And yeah. Oh, Late Shove says interested but just caught the end here. Yeah, well, if you want to hop on to the private meeting that's going to take place in literally about 3 minutes from now, or less actually, as soon as I hop off here, I'm going to jump on that one. You can join through the Patreon link, and a couple posts back, you'll see that there's the private meeting link for tonight. And we can continue this in the private NOL group or private NOL meeting. So thanks again for everybody who stopped by tonight. And until next time, stay lucid.